Oh my goodness. Seriously, I have to just do it. It's like I can tell myself I don't have to think about things that don't matter.
I was designed to do those things. How the hell does this guy know this about me?
It's impossible to not see.
When Dan read for my sister, she was like, he's psychic. She's like, how did you know that?
Yes.
She's like, it's human design, guys. Like, it's just a testimony of how legit it is.
Seriously, Danny was like FBI or CIA. He's like, how the hell does this guy know this about me?
Having my chart read, there were just thing after thing after thing that I was just like, wow, that's me.
This man is reading me and I've never met him before.
I was in the midst of one of the biggest emotional waves I've ever been in my life, and he saved my life.
It seems like everybody has the same reaction. It's that aha moment, and they want to find out more. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Human Design Advantage podcast. My name is Jen, and decoding the matrix for us is Danny Guru.
Jen, it's wonderful to see you. I love our Wednesdays together.
I love our Wednesdays too. Wonderful to see you. How are you this evening?
So far, so good. The dentistry is starting to wear off. 90 minutes in the chair.
Yeah, I don't particularly like the dentist.
Oh, no, more. Yeah, keep bringing it. More. I want more. That's funny.
Well, we have an interesting topic or person we're going to be doing tonight.
Yep.
Jimmy Dore. I've seen a couple of his things. I know who he is, but I'm not an avid watcher.
Yep.
So
I am. That's why I picked him.
Yeah, I know you are.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you've seen a couple things. It's really all you need to see. That's Jimmy. He's a truth hunter. What can you say? So, cool. Yeah, let's do this thing. I can't wait to dive into what makes Jimmy tick.
Yeah, well, before I pull up the chart, guys, you know what to do. As always, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow the show. And if you haven't already booked your session, you can find all the links to do that within the description, as well as the scrolling banner down below.
Yep, like and subscribe. And what episode is this? I think we're on 52.
Oh, I haven't been keeping count of the Wednesday nights, yeah. But somewhere we're past 50. Gotcha. And you guys can also find a PDF of the charts in the description as well, if you can't see it on your phone.
And all of that is because Jennifer rocks. So Jimmy Dore. Oh, Jimmy Dore. So this man is, if you just catch the Jimmy Dore show on YouTube, he's stuck with YouTube. He's a creature of habit. And so he's just stuck on YouTube. So he has to follow their guidelines. And basically he started right away with, hey, something's not right here. He noticed it right away. At the beginning of COVID, something is missing. There's something missing. And he started right away reporting and digging and trying to find out what that. And the next thing you know, he's talking and you can't shut him up. And he's got a 1 to 2 million person audience. And yep, it's huge. And he does comedy shows. I saw him on Saturday night or Sunday night.
That's right. You did go see him.
Yep. I went to Northampton, Massachusetts and saw him at the Northampton Music Academy or Academy of Music. And it was really great. It was really good stuff. And he's funny. And his show was, just to give you a hint on Jimmy Dore, the name of this tour was COVID Lies Are Funny. COVID Lies Are Funny. And he made them funny. It didn't take much work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was just really good. So what's Jimmy Dore do? Politically speaking, he's very democratic, much like how I grew up. We all grew up very similarly, he and I, a lot of people I know. And he started asking, a lot of questions. And next thing you know, everyone is disowning him. And, so what's the ratio, Jen? Maybe, 80% of all the people just start to fall in line and try not to make waves. Another 10 or 15% dip their toe in the water of like, hey, speaking out or saying something about your own stuff. And then they measure resistance and back off. 5% are like bulls in a china shop and will not shut up.
Yeah, I would say that's about right. From observation, watching the process happen with everybody, I think at first, there was maybe a small percentage that got it right away, and then some were kind of alerted, and when they started asking the questions, it's when they really started to get the pushback
Yep.
and the suppression. And that's where it really separated a lot of people who were going to just like not continue to speak out, and let the suppression take them or actually do something. But yeah, it's a good percentage of people who are just going to go with what's being presented with
Yep.
them.
It was the vast majority. And so what is it that made Jimmy so that he couldn't shut up? I mean, he got strikes. His whole job is centered around his YouTube channel. He can't lose it. He can't lose his YouTube.
I would not say that
No,
because
no.
he had.
In his mind, he's like, I can't lose this channel. That I'm talking about him speaking to himself.
Yeah.
He's like, holy cow, I can't. Yet he couldn't stop. He just found every way to maneuver what it was he would say, such that it would fit the community guidelines enough. And then, if you got 1 million subscribers, you usually have a liaison inside of YouTube, and you work with them beforehand or whatever. Anyway, so he just started calling it out. This guy is someone who interviewed RFK for an hour. He had Robert Malone on his show. He's brought on all the people that had something to say. He even brought on people who would sort of debate certain topics, so that you get, that steelman argument going on. You get both sides of an argument being argued, which was healthy. And so he just didn't care. He didn't care. You got a mouth. You're going to talk. Okay, come on. Let's start talking. And nothing was really taboo. A few words were taboo that he managed to find clever ways around. And but other than that, he would not stop. So first thing on his chart, I love this, and we've been seeing a lot of this, Jen, amongst our heroes: Julian Assange. I forget which other one. Robert Malone. A couple others. 2-4 profile. Can't shut these guys up. 2-4 profile. You can't shut them up.
I'm well aware.
Yeah, once they get started, that's an inside thing. That smile on Jennifer's face is because we know each other quite well. Yes, I am a 2-4 profile, and I get kicks under the table once in a while. Yep, good ones, affectionate ones. Thank you, Jennifer. So this 2-4 profile lights me up too, Jen. It's good. This 2-4 profile, just to remind everyone, profile is this. So human design is our genome. I mean, it is this picture you're looking at is the imprinting, the mapping of a certain imprinting our genome receives at birth and before birth, and it's imprinted at the moment we're separate from our mother, and suddenly we're given these characteristics that we're going to live out. We're just going to live them out. We can't help but to live these things out. By the way, that was Jennifer. She had to take a call. And so in the fact that we can't help but to live these things out, it's nice to know, what are they? They all come with actual descriptions, language I can use that will make it all come to life so you can see what they are. The colored in centers and various aspects in here everywhere where you see a line or a colored in circle around a number. Like at the very top, the head center, you'll see 64 and 63 and 24 and 43. They all have language that goes with them, that keynotes and various ways and terminology that when I start to weave it into the story of the person, I start speaking in a language that is that person's language, literally. And it speaks to you at a cellular level. So Jimmy, at a cellular level, is wearing this cloak, this sort of costume of a 2-4 profile. It's the profile we like to say, you're wearing your profile. Everyone sees that. You see it in yourself, and it really helps be an identifier, for lack of a better word. What's the second line? The second line gets called, and the fourth line externalizes and speaks about what they're called into. So this is a person that as soon as something comes across their radar, they're called. If they are called into the story, in Jimmy's case, it's always a story, because that's what he does. If you see below, he's looking for material for his comedy, which isn't hard to find. He's a political commentator for sure. So, he expresses the things that he sees and feels that need to be told. He's a huge personality, like I said, 1 to 2 million viewers. And so when a subject comes across his radar, something comes up and he's always looking for him, suddenly he's called into the moment. And that calling, think of what it means to be called. We've all felt this before. There's second lines in all of our charts. Not everyone has a 2-4 profile, but we all know what this is because it's in the world. I say it all the time. The priest that gets called into the mission and the warrior that's called into the field of battle, they're going to die, but they're called. They go anyway. It happens all the time. You didn't have the energy and suddenly the thing comes along and now you're called into doing it and you just go do the thing. You can't help it. So Jimmy's got this energy that is all about being called to service, called to action. And if the calling is right, he and his generator body go out and generate the energy it takes to see it through. And then when you get to the 4th line of this 2-4 profile, you'll see that information written below the chart on his profile. Type manifesting generator 2-4 profile. Quick disclaimer, there's a strong possibility I don't have the time right, in which case the chart changes a little bit, but the profile stays the same. And so if you see this and you're willing to let me know what time of day you were born, I'll correct this, because later on in the day, he becomes a manifester. Later on in the day, Jen, he becomes a manifester, just so you know. And I kept going back and forth, and I picked the generator Jimmy Dore, not the manifester Jimmy Dore. It just felt that way. Anyway, so that 4th line is all here externalizing. It's fixed in its nature. So these people are fixed. They come across a thing and then they get fixed on their fixed nature of that fixed topic in a fixed way. And it becomes very influential over time. It's designed to be influential, to influence people, to basically bring, and the truer you are to your own self, the more you are just in your own nature, the more that truth will resonate with all the other humans inside the consciousness field that is humanity. We all sort of recognize there's a consciousness field, right? You can go to any place on the planet and many things we humans have in common. I mean, just straight up in common. Not the same language, not the same this, not the same that, yet we'll all nod our heads in agreement at a bunch of things, like most stuff in reality. And that's because genetically we're supposed to be that way. So he brings this ability to externalize his influence across boundaries, much because this 2-4 profile, it gets called. And then when it gets called, it takes this fixed position about externalizing it. I'm going to externalize this. Now that 4th line is unconscious in him, meaning it just comes out of him. And at his age, he's my age, by the way, he's born the same year. At that age, he's come to understand these are aspects in himself. So we're looking at that 27 and that 28, the sun-earth position of his genome, these codons, codon number 27 and number 28. And they're a .4. So how that reads, 27, you're going to love this. Generosity, a nature sharing of attained abundance. And his abundance is information. And he's got a generosity of the information. It's also generosity of spirit and caring. 27 is the gate of caring, our genetic proclivity to determine our role in how we will nurture something. Everyone's got a role in how they nurture. 27 helps determine that. And so how Jimmy is going to care about all things, it's nourishment, the gate of caring, enhancement of the quality of the substance of all activities through caring. Jimmy cares. And in doing so, that generosity extends to the people who disagree with him. It even extends to the people who are, not good on this planet, who are doing a great deal of harm. It doesn't always seem to extend fully because everyone's got their moments, but you can tell it's always there in him. He's always willing to say, hey, you turn over a new leaf, I'll be the first one to listen. Now he helps bring that into the Maya, into the world. And so now, because of Jimmy, there's a lot more of that in the world than there would be without Jimmy. The ability to care and open one's heart in a way that seems fixed, but it's incredibly open to be able to take in all the things. And that's Jimmy Dore. That's one of the things that gives him so much conviction. It's in the sacral. It's generated. He is absolutely used to generating. He is aware that he keeps generating this ability to fall into a humble position that democratically will abdicate and allow the other's grace to come alive if it comes alive. So he knows that about himself. And because of that, it doesn't matter to him that he has to go off and say all the bad things, because in a moment, he'll turn that around. If somebody truly comes off the roof, comes out of the mud tar pit and whatever, and out of the flames into humanity and wakes up themselves. I mean, you know, he would do this with anyone. And then when you look at 28 is the risk taker, the game player, this hunt for the purpose of life that is going to take a risk. So there's a proclivity, a genetic proclivity. It's baked into all of us, whether you have this gate or not. It's in the world. 28 says humanity must fight for its purpose. We cannot go without our purpose. Our purpose feeds our spirit. Our purpose is not negotiable, even though 80% of humanity at first negotiated their purpose away during the beginnings of COVID. You know, through negotiating, their not selves took them away, but not Jimmy. Jimmy could have been caught in all the not self themes, head and ajna, thinking about too many things that don't matter. You can't answer all the questions and you don't feel certain about any of that. Every time you see Jimmy talking, he embraces what he's not certain about. In fact, he's learned to lead with it. Go ahead. Your mic is muted.
I like that you say that because it is important, and you know, I don't watch him enough to recognize that he's doing that, but that's a good skill that anybody gets into, that anybody should get into, because that's how we can have effective conversations. We don't know all the answers at the end of the day, but when you can get comfortable with not knowing the answers and be able to still express the information, the important information, it intrigues people to start doing their own research and verify what the information is being told to them or being relayed.
Absolutely. And you know what? Again, this happens with unconscious definition. We come up with ways of explaining it that if we're smart, we just lead with it. So we sort of get it out of the way and it's there already. And one of his famous sayings are, what do I know? How am I supposed to know? I'm just a pothead comedian from LA. You know, I'm down at the bottom of the totem pole as being able to tell you how, you know, I can prove it. What do I know? And then he brings on guests that do know, and then, you know, gives the
yes, that's perfect.
It's perfect for him, because an open head and open ajna, the top two triangles, with all that action, look at, there's two gates in each one of them.
Yeah, gate of confusion and the gate of doubt.
Doubt and confusion. And if you notice, both of them are on both sides of his body graph.
So can I say something about the gate of doubt that I recognize?
Yes. Yeah, you have it too, right?
Yes. And I can now notice how it works. So the gate of doubt, what I have witnessed is it is really good at finding patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that it does that is, as soon as, you know, most people are in a routine, most people go through in a certain way. As soon as that switches, there's a personality switch, there's something that switches, that gate goes on high alert, and it's like,
it's a disturbance to the pattern.
Yeah, it writes it so we can recognize the glitches within the normal, you know, what would be normal that happens in the collective.
And anybody unfamiliar with human design could say, oh, that's just a human thing to do. We have a brain that works, and so we're noticing things. And the thing is, they're right. Yes. And so to hone it down into language that's specific to this particular genetic construct inside of us that we can now read, doubt notices a disturbance in the pattern. Mm-hmm. Anything, if it glitches, if there's something new, that doubt is there to pressure a survival fear, the fear of chaos. It's the fear of chaos. He doesn't have that gate, but he's got a pressure pointing at that gate, because the head center creates a pressure. Mm-hmm. A great mental function that then gets spit out in the form of what we say. And doubt literally is like things in the future might turn chaotic. That's not good for our survival.
Yeah.
And it's not logical, and it seeks to now understand. So the doubt drives wisdom, intelligence, and understanding. If we live in the doubt, oh, why do I have, if we question why do we have so many doubts, we've missed the point of what is doubt. You know, doubt is logical. You know, let the person, if you've got these two gates in your body graph, or if you've got the gate of doubt, let the person doubt all the time. Love that about them. It's not personal. It's in a collective stream, right? If this is a collective gate, it's just there to be shared. So basically, Jimmy is guaranteed to share his doubt and his confusion. And because he figured out a way to cope with his lack of certainty about it all, by explaining it away, hey, I got a lack of certainty. What do I know? Because he figured out how to do that, he takes all that mental pressure off of himself. And now it can do the work it's supposed to. Hey, I'm confused. I'm not sure if I know. And that causes intelligence to start to reign out of his programming on the spot. Look at his arrows, right? Most of them are pointing right. And I went through right today, and he had lots of rightness through the majority of the day. Except he's got this active brain center, that one left-facing arrow, top left. That's an active brain. It's devouring everything. It's like, oh, what's that? And then as soon as it's done with that, it's what's that? It's sort of one thing at a time, and it focuses right in on the thing, and it's super mentally active, devouring things. If this is the correct variable for Jimmy, then he'll recognize it as he gets hungry easy. He gets hungry easy. As soon as that mental brain of his is tearing it up and doing all the things, you know, he'll get hungry easy. A left-facing arrow in that top left position guarantees that the brain system will use up more calories than a right-facing arrow, just in its function. And especially if we go back to the other keynotes, he is called to find something he cares about, externalize it in a fair way that will help find a purpose. So if that happens, that left-facing arrow, top left arrow, goes into high gear, focused and strategically looking into that one narrow band of a thing, devouring it, and then all of his rightness on the other side picks it up and is able to be this sponge that spits it out in response. Jimmy is a responder. That's why I picked a generator. I see the potential for him to be a manifester, so I can't guarantee this. I'm not certain. But I picked generator because I watch him all the time. And I see him respond out of his rightness just like I do. On the right side of his body graph, the two right-facing arrows are exactly like me, also in a 2-4 profile. And so I watch that happen with him. And it's just really cool. So I'm pretty sure this is right, but I can't guarantee it. So when I get to that gate 27, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. That gate 28, I mean, which is that Earth position on the far left. Gate 28 is holding on. It's this gate 28 is called Ponderance of the Great. That's what the I Ching, the ancient Chinese, named this the Ponderance of the Gate of the Great. We must ponder all the great things. That's where our purpose is. And we updated that name to be the game player, because when you ponder all the things that are great, you might have to do something about something. And then what game will you play to get there? So it's this recognition, instinctual, intuitive recognition, the transitoriness of power and influence. And it's the power to have your intuition be right or not. It's the power to come to a new knowing. It's the power to suddenly understand, come to know that it fits the purpose or not. And what is influence? What is influence is the cross he's on. So when I take this 27, this holding on, the ability through whatever means to keep one's grip. We have a genetic proclivity to keep your grip. The depth of intuition at its best in struggle, it's often of value to others. It often empowers the other. It's an individual gate, and its keynote is empowerment. It wants to empower the others with the grip it held on to the thing that is the intuition of the calling that is fixed in its nature, that can't help but to spit it out and externalize that. Some people just talk their asses off. Jimmy talks his ass off. He can't help it. So when I get to the 31, I mean, I love these two gates that are unconscious. He just figured it out. He's like, and basically gate 28, line 4, his grounding basically said, I need a podcast so I can externalize all this stuff because my purpose has got to get out and empower the people. That's an unconscious action inside of him. Constantly chugging, so he can't help it. Jimmy, what are you doing? Time to make the podcast. Time to make the podcast, you know. Jimmy, it's 4 a.m. It's still time to make the podcast, you know. You can't help it. When I get to the other two lines, before I do his incarnation cross and his channels, I get to 31 on the right-hand side, the personality. Now, he's aware of this. 31, line 2, the sun driven into his body, which is about to be grounded, and it's in a defined center. It's in a defined center. So driven is this gate of influence, giving him the cross of unexpected. Jimmy unexpectedly comes across the topics he needs to talk about. He unexpectedly uncovers the truth of the things he's looking into. He's unexpectedly finds himself in positions of influence. That's what the unexpected is. It's because 31 is called the gate of influence. The I Ching called it influence. We called it leading and leadership. It's this law of friction, whether active or passive, meaning whether it's totally happening or you're waiting for it, that engenders transference and thus influence. It's this engendering of transference that is so important. He gains influence because he's willing to transfer the power back and forth. And ultimately, this gate is a gate of being elected leader. So because he himself is not hoarding the influence, which part of his definition could do, the not self of his channel of that tribal channel of leadership could easily hoard that influence and try and hide it from everyone. But no, Jimmy shares the influence. In every interview he does, he shares the influence and he lets the other be as influential as him. Perfect fourth line trait. Share that influence. And it's collective. So what happens? Jimmy's so magnanimously himself, not worried about things that don't matter, not trying to prove he's certain. He's so magnanimously himself that people re-engender and transfer. It engenders transference and thus influence. So the people he's interviewing have a great deal of influence. At the end of what it is they say, they engender the transference of influence back to Jimmy, and Jimmy closes out the show. So who's the influential one there? The person who's speaking or Jimmy? You can't tell. They both are. That's what this gate of influence is supposed to do. In the not self world, that gate of influence tries to be shared in a draconian way that tries to keep it all to themselves. That gate of influence is about intent, the success of influence based on how it is perceived. And Jimmy's always making it perceived right. Basically, external positive recognition of one's capacity to lead. So what does a good generator do? He waits. And then the person on the other side that he's interviewing says something, and next thing you know, he is called back into leadership right in the middle of the conversation. And he does it so well. It keeps happening to him. And now, Jimmy, if you ever see this, now you can know that's a genetic trait in you. It's your back and forth, and it's the rightness of these arrows that is just waiting to be called. So Jimmy's just sitting there waiting to be called. And when he gets called, you should watch him go on a rant. He goes on a rant. He'll call up Syria on his own phone right in the middle of a podcast. Say, what's the meaning of this word? Just to keep his rant going. That's on to something that will influentially bring what he cares into something that has purpose. So Jimmy's great day is when what he cares about also met up with that it helps deliver purpose into the lives that empowered others. And now that's an influential place he can sit in. And boy, Jimmy's having a good day when these moments take place. You know, that's great for him. Let's see. Since to maintain principles as long as this, so the not self of this would be when those, hang on a second. The not self of this intent would be when he can't control it, basically. When he's not worried about trying to control where the influence is going, he is himself. When he tries to control it, no, you can't say that here, he becomes one of them. He becomes the person that he knows he's not. And so he never stays there for long. He never stays there for long. I've seen him go there in little moments here and there, and he snaps right out of it. So I'm going to guess Jimmy loves his mom. If she's still with us, I don't know. And potentially his mom and dad. I don't know. Went out on a limb with that. I don't know. I only bring that up because these things are indicative of a childhood where you get to be yourself, at least somehow, somewhere along the way. So when I get to 41, I read a wrong word on the thing. This 31 line 2 is arrogance. I meant to read this. Independent action without guidance. That's what he's good at. I'm going to independently get, because it's a second line, arrogance. It gets called into the independent action that he does. I meant to read that part. That's important. That's very telling. That arrogance can be arrogance to a fault, or the arrogance that says, I'm not listening to you. I'm busy being called into the things I care about that bring purpose that I notice are influentially empowering others. You see what's happening? I'm developing the language that is Jimmy right here. And so when I get to 41, it's caution. 41 is the gate of decrease, contraction, this recognition that limitation of resources. When you limit your resources in the right moments, you maximize the development of its potential, right? If you spill all your resources out all over the place, you cannot maximize the potential for growth. It's a hunger to grow. It's a hunger to experience something new. And it comes with fantasizing about all of that. So here's Jimmy daydreaming with all his right-facing arrows, fantasizing about his hunger to basically develop something into a full potential. And if I keynote the rest of the gates in his incarnation cross in this 2-4 profile, one last time, it's the hunger to develop the potential of things that he cares deeply about, that feed the purpose that he can externalize, that he can feel called into with an arrogance that's not going to shut up. You know? And so if that's a job description somewhere and Jimmy comes in with his resume, I would say, Jimmy, put down your resume and hand him your chart and you'll get hired. So, on the spot. But this caution is the one thing that is good for, not the one thing, it's a thing that's very good for him. This caution says humanism tampered by pragmatism. So humanism, love of humanity. This is a shared trait looking to experience experiences with humanity. And the experience Jimmy wants to have more than anything is to influentially describe the things he cares about that help empower the purpose of humanity. So that's Jimmy in a nutshell. But there's a caution. It's got to be practical. There's a pragmatism. Otherwise, I don't want to be called into the thing. So Jimmy inherently won't be called if there's not a certain pragmatism to it. And that's healthy for a second line. If a second line just lets themselves get called into any old thing all over the place, what's going to happen? They're going to burn out. They're going to burn out. And they're never going to get called into the right thing because they get called into everything. So think about what it is to get called. To get called means I'm now not doing all the other things I was just doing. I'm called. It's a lot of work if the thing's a big deal. I got called into human design. 15 years later, I've still got my book open reading from it. You know what I mean? It's a lot of work. If someone said, Dan, you're going to do all this work 15 years ago, I'd be rolling my eyes and be like, dude, come on. I'm trying to write alone. I'm trying to, I would be fatigued, but luckily I was called. So this caution says it's this energy for one's own feelings ex parte and not having to concern themselves with the other. That can seem selfish at times, and in its not self way, it's the energy for the display of feelings regardless of the other. So one is this pragmatism about the feelings I'm going to let out, tempered by my own pragmatism, but not in regard to the other. So if you don't like it, tough is what that says. And all the rest of his design says, I still love you, dude. You're my neighbor. I don't hate that. His big theme of his show is don't hate your neighbor. They didn't put this information into us. It's not their fault. And so Jimmy would love to get back to that. Don't hate your neighbor. It's one of his big things that he says. And so that's something he gets called into. He gets called into this practical way of doing it. If it's his not self that's running through because he's got an open root center and he's under too much pressure, or he's got he's got an open emotional center and he's just trying to avoid the conflict. There's too much conflict. And, then he can start thinking about things that don't matter quickly for a moment or two. And in that moment, his not self will come back and her certain hubris will come out that just doesn't even care about the other. So, but that's not Jimmy's natural way. He doesn't want to live in that. He sees it. By his age, he sees it when that happens. And he probably even apologizes. Hey, sorry, dude, I went too far. Didn't mean it. Didn't want to go that far. Now you know. So there's his incarnation cross. You take all that up and a hunger and a fuel that's sort of practical, has caution, but once you let that genie out of the bag, that caution goes to the wind, and he's not going to worry about your feelings. He's got to explain the thing that's coming out. When you take that and lead it into suddenly the unexpected influence pours out of Jimmy about the stuff he cares about, when you take all of this and how he's going to fight for a purpose, and you put all that together in this 2-4 profile, his definition starts to make a great deal of sense. He's got 2 channels of definition here. Jennifer, you're familiar with both of these channels. I have this channel that is 15-5 from the sacral G center. So Jimmy's identity is all set. It's fixed in place. He's going to share his rhythm. That show bounces around to Jimmy's rhythm, period. The whole show rhythms itself around Jimmy. And and he brings people into the flow. And gate 15 says, I dig the extremes of all this. I can float in this extreme nature. And gate 15 says, don't worry, I can take those extreme nuggets and turn it into a new fixed pattern that sustains life. And then we can share it. This is logical. And then the extreme nature, Jimmy says, we got something new coming. It's wicked extreme and it's new. And the fixed pattern say, don't worry. Like all cellular life, we'll adapt, bring it in. Let's turn it into a fixed pattern. So extreme nature gets fixed into a pattern. That's called the flow. And it's magnetic. Jimmy's aura extends out, twice as far as anyone who doesn't have this channel. So it's just a thing about this channel. This channel guarantees an aura that extends out, 8 feet, 10 feet in all directions, 12 feet at times. Potentially, that's a bit far to actually fully extend, but you never know. It extends out really far and it influences many people. And it brings people into the flow. And then when you look over to the right, one gate, you see gate number 29. Gate 29 is a commitment, a perseverance. Gate 29 off the top of the sacral. It says, I want to break through and I want to take this commitment and have it become a yes that I want to do. And I will get fatigued if it's a yes that's not right for me. If I said yes when I didn't mean yes to the thing, then I will get fatigued. But if it's a thing I feel called into, I have boundless commitment to persevere. That's what it's our genetic proclivity to generate day in and day out perseverance towards something that needs to be shared about an experience. And he's even got a gate 59, which guarantees he breaks down the aura of others. He's always breaking down the aura of others. No one doesn't let Jimmy in to shake your hand at least once. They may not like him after that. But even the people I met on the way out, there was a young lady I spoke to and I said, hey, this was great. Thanks for having Jimmy. I guess you work here. I said, did you enjoy it? And she was a young lady and she had a quite, whatever. She's a little bit standoffish. She just said, not so much, and she's because Jimmy's putting truth to power. Northampton is super duper liberal. It's not her fault. I just said, don't worry, you'll be okay. That's what I said to her. But in witnessing that Jimmy could have come up to that gal, let's say serendipitously, and just shook her hand and said, hey, thanks for making sure the show went off. In that moment, that gal, who's a nice gal under any other circumstance, would have broken down to him. Would have been broken through to by him, her barriers would have been crumbled away, at least for the moment. And she would have shook his hand, and had he said something, she would have had to say something back. This next definition. So there's his rhythm. He magnetically brings things into the flow with a perseverance to break through, and a gate 27 off the left that says, I'm going to nurture something here, something I care about. I'm driven to get. It's in my incarnation cross, and it's going to drive some new, unexpected, cool, mutative things. Look out. And you take all of this and you move that up to the second channel, which goes from 21 to 45 and gives them a big fat ego. Jimmy is not afraid. Jimmy's got a big ego. Jimmy's going to roll up his sleeves. Jimmy's going to do what he says he's going to do. You can't tell Jimmy not to do the thing. You know, other 2-4 profiles might feel called into something and someone can come and say, don't do the thing. And then that 2-4 hermit is just going to sidestep them and, you know, figure out as soon as they're not looking, they're going to go do the thing. Okay. Because they're called. You can't stop them, but they're going to maybe avoid it a little bit, not sure how to fight that ego fight. But Jimmy's got this strong ego defined. So he just looks straight in the face. I'm doing the thing. That's Jimmy. And it's a design of bringing all the tribal care and nurture under one roof. So what does Jimmy do? He's constantly talking about the tribal care and nurture of humanity. And guys, it's not, don't hate your neighbor. It's not them. It's a few of these. And he uses a lot of expletives sometimes. When he gets on a roll, he sounds like I do when I get on a roll and I start dropping bombs and cocksucker this and that, you know, for a moment. And he lets this stuff rip. And he's like, it's those guys. It's those guys bringing this a giant merger of corporate and state influence, all one thing coming down upon us. That's what this is. And he's right. So when you've got this channel, this is a channel of the leader and the enforcer and the gatherer of the tribe. This is the king and the queen. And it's the gate 21 unconscious in him that will basically, it will fight back and beat back any resistance to that. Gate 21 is the gate of control, and he controls his environment. This can turn very nasty. If you're not awake to your nature with a loving way, luckily in his incarnation cross is a guarantee of care and nurture if he's himself. So his control of things is just limited to the times the second line has to simply snap and control the dang thing. You know what I mean? And he will control it. That ego voice will be heard. And then he goes right back to his natural harmony self, which is what the second line needs. First, and his abdicating way that is gracious enough to whatever. And that gate 45 says, ultimately, this is the channel of money and the channel of the king and the queen and rulership, the channel of rulership. This would be on the cross of rulership. 45 is the king and the queen themselves. It is the manifesting voice of the tribe that says, I have. And what it wants to have is a supportive tribe that's all kept together and well fed. That's what this voice for humanity, gate 45, when it says I have, what it really wants to have when it's speaking out its true nature as a 9-centered human, is it wants to have security for the whole tribe. It is called gathering together. It's about gathering the forces together, all of them. Now, gate 21 helps control that like an enforcer so that it is gathered together. That's true. But the real grace of it all is when 45 puts we in front of everything. Now, 45 really, it says I because he's human. And the first voice out of the human is I. But its grace quickly turns to we. So basically, I see all the support. Oh, we have all the support. And because it's the manifesting tribal voice of the tribe, what it manifests is we have been gathered together. We all support each other. The tribe is well fed. The rules are in place. There is civil society. Jimmy just wants civil society, and it's a great gate of teaching. So his one manifesting gate that is a definition that makes him a manifesting generator that comes off of the ego, guarantees the ego willpower to keep a commitment is going to be there to teach the tribe what is true. And as it turns out, the purpose of all these things is to get to what is true. Jimmy's purpose is to find truth. And so what does he do? He spits it out as gate 45, and he can't help it. He can't help but to do that. And dude, it's an ego manifested gate. If there were no sacral, this would be an ego manifester. So it's really powerful stuff. And it's the channel of money because money is a very tribal thing. You know, money just means resources. We got the food, we got the water, we've got land, we've got bison going through, we've got no war with our neighbors. You know what I mean? We've got community. This is all what this channel wants more than anything in its most exalted fashion. And Jimmy generally tends to live that out. I'm sure in his private life, there's moments where he's a selfish little turd and, you know, it's not good for me. whatever. In his public life, he portrays all the right stuff, and it's perfect for him. And this is what makes it such that Jimmy can't help but to have a comedy tour that says COVID lies are funny, going to a town that doesn't want him. Yet he filled the house. Maybe they are funny. And that's what the identification of this second line is called upon. He's called upon the recognition that, hey, they are funny. And I am the ruler, and I'm going to educate the rest of the tribe. They're funny. I'm here to educate you. Guess what? They're funny. And so he's educating us to they're funny. And that helps suit his purpose about the stuff he cares for. And because of all of that, the cross of the unexpected, which is the cross he's on, unexpectedly, Jimmy has influence and leadership. And that, my friends, is Jimmy Dore in a nutshell.
Good job.
Yeah,
I'll have to check out some of his stuff.
Yeah, if you do, you know how I'm always talking about how I love to watch the people closely, and I'm digging in, and I'll rewind and watch what they just said again. Do that a little bit, just even for a few minutes, just like watch intently and have everything else turned off, and you'll see what I was keynoting there. It's written all over him. It comes out quickly. It's a beautiful thing to watch.
I will do that. Well, thank you very much.
This was great, Jen. Thanks for letting me do Jimmy. This is a good one.
No problem. Thank you guys for everyone who tuned in. Make sure you subscribe, follow the show, share this out. If you haven't already got your session, couple sessions, kids, children's sessions, you can find all the links down below and in the description. If you have any trouble booking, send a message through the Instagram app. We'll get back to you. I know Dan's really good at checking that.
Yep, and I'll check whatever. Just get a message to us. If you can't book it, or my email's usually there, or what have you, can even text me, for God's sakes. But book your session so you can know what all that stuff was on the chart I just read. You need to know it for yourself so I can speak your language. And then you can give it to your wife and your kids, or you can give it to your kids and get it. You need it.
Yes. All right, guys. Well, we will see you on Sunday, and I hope everybody has a beautiful and blessed evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.